Psst, check out my Patreon.
Well, here we are, the last grand episode event before the series reaches its conclusion. Bear in mind that these 4 episodes only mark the midpoint of Season 3 and that we're only halfway through all of the episodes in this batch. However, this is the last multi-part special that runs for more than 11 minutes, hence its significance. Everything after this is a regular ol' episode. If we count all 4 parts of Small World as separate episodes from one another, and we do the same with Power of 4, then the 4th and final part of this special, Heart to Heartstone, is actually the 100th episode of the reboot overall, meaning this video marks my covering of 100 reboot episodes in total. That is, of course, not counting things like the minisodes, my top 10s, my news videos, etc. Now, as for Small World, as far as I'm aware, I was the only person on the entire platform of YouTube that even made a video on this 4-part TV special when it premiered back in 2018. And even then, I only did a discussion video on it instead of a full-on impressions video. It's kinda weird how Cartoon Network gave this special like absolutely zero fanfare, even though it technically falls under the same criteria as a TV movie. You'd think they'd want to market the hell out of this or something so they can make one more quick buck before throwing in the towel on this one, but I guess Lester Van Luster was nowhere near as marketable as Bliss the 4th Powerpuff Girl. I don't recall any advertisements, promos, online marketing, social media posts, or anything surrounding the airing of this special, despite it basically being in the same vein as Power of 4 minus one 11-minute segment. And seeing as barely anybody even talked about it, and so many had long since moved past the PPG reboot by that point, it went completely unnoticed. And I think that's a shame, because truth be told, I really don't think this special is all that bad. I will say, after witnessing the atrocities of Power of 4, this multi-part special is a breath of fresh air because it's nowhere near that level of terrible, contrived story writing that contradicts the very foundation of the show. Thank goodness for that. I don't know if I could handle reviewing another Bliss special again. As you can see, this video is one long review of me going through the entirety of Small World, one episode at a time. I was debating on making separate videos for each section, again, like I did with Power of 4, but really, I think just one big video is enough for this. I don't need to stretch it out over multiple reviews. I honestly wish I had more trivia or build-up to present before diving into this the same way that I was able to for other events like Power of 4, The Last Downycorn, and even Never Been Blissed, but I struggled to find any material at all about this 4-parter, even on social media. It almost feels like nobody had their eyes on this, except me and a select few who just happened to be watching Cartoon Network that day. Even Total Eclipse of the Card at least had the Rowdy Rough Boys talking point, but everyone had long since moved on from the PPG 2016 hatedom by this point, and not many of us were left. But with that whole spiel out of the way, let's just begin with part 1 of this 45-minute special, Abra Disaster.
Come on, girls! Time to go to work! It is I!
Abra Disaster begins with the girls exiting Penguin Pete's ice cream parlor and gloating about the various flavors that they each got. Blossom's a health nut who's just got what's basically the equivalent of grass flavor, and Buttercup got triple brownie mega fudge explosion. It's so extreme that it was banned in 6 countries. Oh, and Bubbles just got every flavor they offer all at once. Suddenly bad guys show up, and next we get a montage of the girls springing into action to take down the Gnat, Pug-Faced Polly, Generic Monster, Infernus, that one pink furry creature, and the Amoeba Boys, who were treated as characters only good enough to fill in the role of stock criminal the girls punch in the face one time to make the montage longer. And after that, it's all said and done. In comes Mojo with his giant pair of pants to hopefully try and destroy the town.
Behold my unstoppable baggy jeans bop! It's both fashionable and destructive.
Not really sure why mechanical jeans was his weapon of choice here. Doesn't that feel like more of a fashionista's suit rather than Mojo? And just like all the other villains before him, he fails. But before the girls can knock him out and lock him up for good, he gets whisked away by a magical puff of smoke and transported to a mystical castle that serves as the home of the evil magician supervillain known as Lester Von Luster. What gets me most about this whole occurrence is that the Powerpuff Girls don't question this happening at all, and just choose to go home and play video games instead of getting down to the bottom of things. Who needs to bother wasting their time trying to find the whereabouts of their evil archenemy to possibly prevent an even worse crime from occurring, right? Lester introduces himself, or rather, Mojo introduces him to the audience as this magnificent supervillain who's capable of pretty much anything magic can imagine.
Lester Van Luster?
That's right. Legendary villain of ground and sky. The Archduke of Anarchy, the Baron of Badness, the Magician of Magical Mayhem.
Teleporting? Check. Magic? Check. Shrinking the Eiffel Tower into a keychain? Check. Yep, this guy pretty much got it all with his whipped cream hair and Las Vegas aesthetic. He's pretty much the second most powerful villain the reboot has ever seen. After him, of course, although I could see people arguing for Jemica too. I like to think incorporating the aesthetic and vibes of Las Vegas to Lester Van Luster was done on purpose because of the LV letter correlation, which is neat I guess, but I'm not sure if that was the actual intent or not. As a villain, I think Lester's pretty decent as far as the reboot goes, considering he's actually got an evil plan up his sleeve that he intends to carry out. Lester here is actually voiced by Dwight Schultz, too, the same actor who plays Mung Dahl on Chowder.
See, Mojo? That is what makes a good villain a great villain.
You know, Chowder, we should really spend more time like this together.
And now that I've pointed this out to you, you will never be able to unhear it. Turns out that our villain of the week is here because he's got a proposition for Mojo. See, he seeks to overtake Townsville as his next task of amusement because the guy basically feels he can get away with whatever he wants thanks to his magical gifts. Now, I don't know how long he's been around in this reboot's canon universe, but it probably couldn't be too long considering the entire world would be in crisis if all of these national cities and landmarks just disappeared out of existence months or years ago. But his main conundrum here is that the Powerpuff Girls stand in his way from acquiring world domination, and he's here to offer Mojo a position as his partner to help bring them down and take over the city, stomping those girls into the ground once and for all. Seeing as Mojo is apparently the resident expert when it comes to battling the Powerpuff Girls, this decision makes sense, although Mojo's utter worship of the guy seems unwarranted given that this character has never ever been mentioned before. You know, a competent villain would probably view this as an opportunity that would benefit them both because their interests are aligned and whatnot, but not Mojo. He doesn't care. In fact, he barely has any evil intentions with this. He's just awestruck with how amazing it would be for him to work with somebody he idolizes.
You truly are the terror of Townsville.
Needless to say, it doesn't take Lester very much to convince Mojo to join his cause. Also, Mojo's chair is actually present in this room when he first warps in, even though Lester poofs it into existence after Mojo accepts the partnership, so there's a continuity error for you. Back with the Powerpuff Girls, we can see them playing Goat Fighter Simulator together without a care in the world. They make the astute observation that it was kind of weird for Mojo to just show up and vanish the way he did, but they just sort of shrug it off like it's nothing and keep playing their game. I'd also like to mention that during this scene, as well as the one in the beginning where they defeat all of the villains, they come across as seriously cocky.
I don't want to seem overconfident, but it's safe to say the Powerpuff Girls can beat anyone, anywhere, with any hair. Please stop doing that.
But I don't know. If you've been watching all these episodes, or my reviews of all these episodes at the very least, you'd probably realize that the girls seem to have more difficulty taking down bad guys than this episode portrays. I mean, seeing as they need to either rely on somebody else to rescue them or have a pure coincidence manage to get them out of an otherwise unwinnable situation, yeah, I don't think their cocky attitudes are really in character or reflective of the way they behave over the entire series.
I don't need the help of a guy. An Octi-hating Octi-napper like you. Now don't you feel better? Let's do this. You're going down, you eight-legged freak! Hey, that's Sapna. Liked her as a human. Hate her as a spider. All right, Bubbles. Let's get you home. Let go of me.
nefarious, stinky breath.
Who knew that a little gossiping amongst friends would turn into a giant monster?
Hasta la pasta, Donnie.
No one hurts my best friend. Hi, Donnie. What is this stuff? Indestructible icing! I just needed some time to capture your sisters. Hi, Blossom.
Hey, Bloss.
Hooty hoot! A go! Where's it at? Do you know? See, Buttercup? Everyone, stay in the zone listed in your orientation handbook, and we'll beat these guys in no time.
Indestructible fabric.
Bubbles! Okay, Mojo. Ready or not, here I... Okay, guess you were ready. Is that all you got, Sport?
Please.
Gross.
You can finally admit that you've been cheating, because as we said, cheaters never...
We can use them as whips.
Goalie, 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 goalie! Goalie, 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 goalie! That's a lot of tanks. Yeah! And... Huh? Where'd he go? Let's go! Wait! Maybe it's one of those good giant evil lava monsters.
But again, they just shrug this off and continue playing until Mojo somehow manages to hack into their TV as if what they were playing was actually a live broadcast of some sort and not a video game console that is directly connected to the television and thus could not be interfered with by a cable broadcast because those two are on separate inputs on the device. But hey, logic, am I right? This is where he basically tells them he's gonna blow up the moon.
If he blows up the moon, it'll cause huge meteor showers, tidal waves, earthquakes, fire, destruction! It'll be the end of the world! And worst of all, with the moon gone, what would the cow jump over?
Oh look, more stock images. Yay. Right, well, considering this episode is all about magic, the girls magically find a way to power their television and play a disconnected game console as they fly up into space. They're placing bets on how fast they can beat Mojo as if it's a regular thing, but it hasn't been, so like, I don't really find the cockiness all that humorous or fitting. The fact that the girls are flying to space and carrying their game console and TV with them did make me crack a smile, even if it doesn't make sense, however, because it did feel like something that the girls were capable of. At the very least, I would have liked to have seen Bubbles creating some static electricity or something that would give us a reason to believe that these devices were actually working, but hey. Also, Mojo can breathe in space without explanation. I mean, the girls I get because they're not the same life forms as those naturally born on Earth, so who's to say they have lungs? But Mojo is a real carbon-based chimpanzee.
Hey, how can you even breathe in space?
Magic!
Like I said, no explanation. Oh, there's also this gag where the girls place bets on how fast it would take them to beat up Mojo, and Buttercup bets 7.5 seconds, and then just a few seconds later, Bubbles also bets 7.5 seconds. The joke is that Bubbles repeated what Buttercup said.
7.5 seconds.
And I'll go with... Did anyone say 7.5 seconds?
This whole sequence can basically be summed up as Mojo giving the girls 1 minute to defuse an explosive when in reality they're given 128 seconds. And that's seriously one of my biggest pet peeves in like all of media. So I apologize that I'm about to go on this tangent, but I kinda want to. It doesn't matter if it's the Powerpuff Girls reboot or not. This is something that spans across movies and shows of all genres, all categories. It just bothers me when we're shown a time-limited sequence like this one, and the show or movie says that the characters have X amount of time, but then they're given more or less than that amount of time to actually pull things off. Certainly, if there are edits such as cuts to other settings where different events may be taking place at a different point in time, then that's fine. I don't mind if the runtime of the media is longer than the diegetic time limit assigned per se. I mind when the time assigned during that specific event is diegetically longer than what is pronounced, especially when it is one continuous scene with no breaks in chronology. In other words, if there is no direct or implied time skip or slowdown in a scene that simultaneously establishes and shows the end result, it is disorienting because the characters got a longer amount of time or a shorter amount of time than they actually had. For example, take this moment here.
No, you only have 50 seconds.
Ha! No problem. It's gonna take more than parlor tricks to stop us.
Smoke ball.
Where'd he go?
This trick will knock you out. 35 seconds.
The amount of time that passed according to the time limit on the bomb was 15 seconds, yet the actual runtime of the clip in between both shots ran for 23 seconds. That is a clear disconnect that distracts me away from the tension of the timer because I've become aware that the characters are not in a suspenseful situation. They could take a whole 30 seconds to tie their shoes and the timer on the bomb would not change. If the characters are not forced to work within the time limit that is assigned to them, then there is no tension. I would feel a ton of suspense if the diegesis and non-diegesis of this moment coincided, because it would mean that the time limit the characters are experiencing is the same amount of real time that I experience. But the reality is they have all the time in the world because the end result only occurs once a non-diegetic amount of time passes. At the very least, I do like how all of these cards have Mojo's face on them. That was a nifty touch, and I also like the magic-based attacks he uses, such as pulling a rabbit out of a hat or using a smoke ball. That's very in tune with the magician aesthetic he's going for. But back to the time limit thing. This gives the characters in the show the ability to take their sweet time instead of working with the restriction that has been imposed by the villain, which I find negatively impacts my experience because the apprehensiveness that is supposed to be created in situations like this becomes wholly non-existent. I understand that distinguishing the difference between diegesis and non-diegesis is important because it allows events in the diegesis to take place at a different rate than the non-diegesis. For example, we don't actually see how long it takes the girls to go back home and play video games once Mojo disappears, but when attempting to create suspense under the pressure of something like a bomb going off, the viewer's experience can become hindered when these two do not align. For example, in Sonic Adventure 2, there's this scene where Rouge is seen stuck inside a vault with some Chaos Emeralds as a timer counts down from 1 minute.
Chaos control!
And then we see Shadow spontaneously appear and save her with mere seconds to spare. I can't believe it's that difficult for the animators to match the time on the countdown with the actual runtime of the scene. Just have this timer start at 16 seconds instead of 60 and it would have lined up perfectly, you know? I know I'm not the only one who picks up on when time seemingly skips ahead in situations like these, where the audience is made aware that it is an important factor in the events being presented in front of them. It just sort of takes me and others out of it because it's like, why did the timer suddenly change so dramatically when there's no indication that any time has passed at all, or too much time has passed? Of course, there are plenty of exceptions where this would get a pass from me, cutting away to a separate occurrence, slow-mo or speed-ups to the raw footage that adds a new kind of dramatic effect. There are several cases where it's totally fine. Even purposefully tampering with the temporality of the film to express new ideas is acceptable. But this is the PPG reboot where it's clearly not done for an artistic purpose. This is one continuous battle with Mojo where stakes are involved and no edits are present to show a change in time. It's just you know, not paying attention. Honestly, I have more to say about that trope than this battle because it's pretty much just Mojo acting competent with magic to hit the girls a few times and then pulling a complete 180 and becoming a moron when the girls do the exact same thing to him.
Hey, Mojo! Ta-da! I'm a magician.
Ooh, I love magic.
And honestly, I prefer the girls' tricks in Abracadabra. Also, shouldn't the chains that Blossom tied Mojo up in be glowing pink? We see rope that Buttercup creates later on glowing green, so how did Blossom just randomly create these real physical chains?
Magic!
Oh, that's fair. But ultimately, the girls fail to stop the bomb anyway, so it looks like the moon is getting blown up. Just like in Sonic Adventure 2. Wow, that's the second time I mentioned Sonic Adventure 2 in the past 4 minutes.
What?
Or so we thought. Nope, in actuality, that was just a distraction so that Lester can magically steal the entire city of Townsville right out from under the girls' noses, which this reboot constantly likes to remind us that they have. And they even get a call from the mayor about a white light enveloping them. Man, I don't know how she managed it, but Blossom got great reception on the moon right there. That's wild. And I love how the show played that dramatic music cue twice because I guess it wasn't long enough the first time for some reason. Yeah. That wraps up part 1 of Small World. And again, like Power of 4, this special is split into individual episodes with unique titles, this one being Abra Disaster. Although what's weird is that unlike Power of 4, all 4 of these episodes have the exact same title card with the subtitle change to match that part. Unless you're watching this on a streaming service like I am, in which case you don't even see the subtitle and you just get the Small World title card. Honestly, it's a fine setup for the premise, but that's all it is. Setup. No major backstory for Lester or continuity errors, thankfully, and or yet, but the whole episode could have been condensed into half the runtime that it has. I mean, I spent the majority of this portion just talking about the temporal alignment of suspenseful situations rather than the actual events that we're presented with because really it's just as straightforward as I described. Mojo and Lester team up, Mojo distracts the goons on the moon for a while, and Lester makes Townsville disappear. Other than establishing Lester and the disappearance of Townsville, there was nothing else to be gained. Luckily, things pick right back up where part 1 left off in the second episode, Stone Cold Spider, so I guess we can move on to that one now. Oh, and I should mention that the original airings of these episodes also featured a to be continued screen that was literally just ripped straight from the Space Tow Truck show in The Big Sleep. Next up, we have Stone Cold Spider, which isn't given a Buttercup title card despite somewhat being about Buttercup, and at the very least I'm grateful for the consistency this time, because I was really confused as to why Find Your Bliss was considered a Bubbles episode in Power of 4. I'll also add that the titles for this special are all fine. Abra Disaster, Stone Cold Spider, the Maze Daze, and Heart to Heartstone. I think that the latter of these 4 is the best one, but the other 3 are perfectly serviceable. We've experienced way worse in this show, as we all know. This second part begins with the girls utterly baffled by the disappearance of their beloved city, awestruck at how the entire thing just up and Thanos snapped out of existence. Lucky for them, Lester is not afraid of gloating about his victory and appears on a magical screen in the sky to explain that he's added Townsville to his collection of important landmark themed snow globes because it gives him some sort of sick and twisted amusement. He also seems to have some sort of fascination with hogs, considering he's got 2 snow globes dedicated to those and only 1 for everything else. Not sure why you get so much satisfaction with capturing things like Mount Rushmore and the Eiffel Tower. It doesn't seem like he has an ulterior motive, but hey, everyone has their hobbies, I guess. I can't even imagine what it must be like to be trapped inside that snow globe, though.
Oh, I just love my new snow globe.
So this was his plan all along, confining the Powerpuff Girls' beloved home to a gift shop knick-knack prison. Unfortunately for them, he fizzles away before they can question him any further, leading to a rather frustrating outburst from Buttercup that I admittedly thought was fitting and wish the girls used their powers to express their emotions like this much more often. It's a really cool way to see them use their powers in more than just a crime-fighting sense. While all hope may seem lost, one of their allies luckily managed to escape the shrinking blast in the nick of time.
You dodged the shrink ray!
Well, not exactly.
When Lester fired his magic ray to shrink the town, I dove into my emergency bunker at the last second. But I'm afraid I still got shrunk a little.
On one hand, it makes sense because it shows that he was affected by the shrink blast's radius, just not entirely, so it is an interesting way to represent that he was injured or wounded without displaying graphic violence. However, at the same time, the professor's already an annoying character as it is, and making him chibi like this only enhances the irritation he provides. This is a recipe for disaster. The higher pitched voice is just not doing it for me. At the very least, the professor does serve a purpose in being here, namely that he tasks the girls in setting out to find the Heartstones. Heartstones. For some reason I keep wanting to reference the video game, but that is completely unrelated to this. The Heartstones can basically be treated as these MacGuffins that will allow the girls to save the day in the end. So the special becomes a fetch quest of sorts as they set out to track them down using the professor's Swiss Army knife.
Luckily, I know where they are, thanks to my trusty utility knife. And its geothermal sonar sensor.
Why it's a Swiss Army knife? I have no idea, but the girls set out to find the first of these mystic relics in none other than Antarctica. Well, if the other snow-themed episodes in this series are anything to go by, yeah. I find that this is the worst part of the entire 4, but we'll get into more detail as the story progresses as to why exactly I feel that way. Next, we see Bubbles flying with a flock of geese as she leads them to their destination, although once she bails out, things don't exactly go well for the rest of the group.
Sorry, guys. This is my stop. I'm sure you'll be fine without me. Just choose a leader and keep on flying.
This will be a running gag going forward, so don't forget about it. They arrive at the front of an ice cave, not to be confused with the cave from the Buttercup job where Jemiko wanted to acquire the Doom Cube. Both of these caves are located in Antarctica, so I wouldn't be surprised if you confused the two. Buttercup wastes no time at all charging in, screaming all Leroy Jenkins style, with Blossom chastising her not too far behind. And thanks to Buttercup's incessant yelling, she awoke an ice coyote which strikes at them from out of nowhere. Oh joy, Supna's here to make her final appearance of the series, and spoiler alert, it's not very good. In actuality, I have a lot of problems with her portrayal here that kinda goes against the other 2 episodes we've seen of her, those being Arachno Romance and Spider Sense. Of course, with Spider being in the title, the fact that Supna's here should have been given away. And what exactly happened in the cocky attitude the girls were just expressing in the previous episode? Just a few minutes ago, they were bragging how they demolished Mojo on the moon in 7.5 seconds, and now they're shivering in a corner waiting to get eaten by an ice coyote. Supna saw that the girls were in danger and jumped to their aid, which is nothing new at this point, with her newfound control of her spider powers. Yep, remember that spider transformation from Spider Sense in Season 2? Well, she's now capable of using it in full force, signifying character development, although she's still not fully cured. And as an important reminder for those who may be quick to accuse Supna of looking more like a scorpion rather than a spider, I had done research on this during my Spider Sense review, and it turns out that there are spiders in tropical regions that have developed scorpion-like anatomy. Scorpions are also a part of the arachnid family anyways, so it's not like this is a completely unrelated species. She explains her studies to the girls sometime later when they're camping out, stating that she's hoping the ice cave's crystals may hold the cure she needs to return to normal once and for all. Blossom, however, is somewhat skeptical of this, saying that Supna never informed the professor of this information because I guess she is required to do it or something? Jeez, Blossom, let her live her life. Buttercup also butts in and defends Supna because she just saved their lives regardless of any reasonable suspicions Blossom may have had. The girls mention that they're seeking out the Heartstone, which triggers some sort of response in Supna, and she gets all excited like to lead them to it right away.
Yes! I know exactly where it is! I can take you there! Let's go! Right now!
And if that's not obvious something is up, I don't know what is, because she takes them literally right away. So we cut to them walking for a bit, and then Supna suggests they set up camp again.
It's a long way to the Heartstone. We should camp for the night.
So then what was the point in walking for a bit? Like, they were already at camp and then Sapna leads them for a bit, determined to find the stone, and then she's like, nah, actually, let's camp instead. Seems a bit indecisive, wouldn't you say? Not to mention the fact that they left all of their supplies back at the previous spot they were sitting at. Now they've got nothing but their sleeping bags and a fire. Where was the logic in making that decision, Sapna? Blossom's also got a bad feeling about all of this, and I mean, quite frankly, it's pretty obvious. You left all the supplies back behind where you were staying. But her only justification is that she hasn't told the professor and that Sapna said she was confident. Not really the best justification if I'm being honest here, because she's not legally obligated to tell the professor anything, and she specifically said she was making progress on her condition, so why wouldn't her confidence be up higher than the last time they saw her? Like, if I was recovering for something, I'd probably be feeling really good. I'd be more confident. I'd be like, yeah, things are looking up. What's wrong with being confident? Just because she's timid most of the time doesn't mean she can't ever be confident. I'm sorry, that's such terrible reasoning on Blossom's part. A better justification for Blossom's thinking here is the fact that they've left all of the supplies back with the tent instead of taking it with them. But I guess this allows Blossom to wander off and talk to Sapna by herself while her sisters chill back at their sleeping bags, and she overhears Sapna talking to herself about how Blossom is onto her.
I'll have to get rid of her. Then I'll get the stone and have the power to...
Sapna!
So she really is up to something, thus making her an antagonist of some sort. She even goes so far as to hit herself with a crystal in the head and blame Blossom for attacking her, causing Buttercup and Bubbles to overhear and come restrain her without a second thought because Blossom's the one who's acting crazy, not Sapna. Clearly.
Blossom has ice madness.
Ice madness? You mean polar paranoia? The chilly silly? The frozen phobia? The below zero fearo? Huh, never heard of it.
We're not even going to ask for Blossom's side of the story and let her speak here. Yeah, I seriously hate how Buttercup just jumps to Sapna's defense and attacks Blossom for how rude she's being, despite the fact that she won't even hear Blossom's reasoning out. Don't get me wrong, I still found Blossom's justifications were weak until she confirmed her suspicions, but Buttercup yells at her every time Blossom questions anything super aggressive like, and that is not necessary. Buttercup even goes so far as to tie her to a pole until they come across the Heartstone, and the rope that's created is a green hue rather than the real chain like the one that was used on Mojo, although it does actually become regular rope in one shot. Of course, due to their discovery of the Heartstone, it manifests into this Cerberus creature, causing the three unrestrained individuals to spring into action and defeat the giant beast that is guarding it. Bubbles and Sapna, they attempt to fight and fight to no avail, but Buttercup? Psh, it's so easy, she takes the thing down in one swing. I mean, I knew Buttercup was going to be triumphant because this is the green Heartstone we're dealing with here, but damn. You'd think for how powerful these ancient relics are supposed to be, there'd be more of a fight involved in acquiring the damn thing. This was like a walk in the park. Where's the challenge? Where's the excitement? The thrill? This scenario really could have been an awesome setup for Buttercup's skills to be put to the test, but instead it's just over in one swing. How exactly did this show us that Buttercup was worthy if she didn't even have to try? I mean, I get this show puts her up on this pedestal, but damn. Instead, Sapna asks Buttercup to see the Heartstone for herself, and Buttercup willingly hands it over to her like it's nothing.
Let me see it.
Okay, here you go. Oops.
Or so we thought. No, instead she punches Sapna in the face to knock some sense into her, and we flash to a later point where the girls are saying their goodbyes.
Now that you freed me from the power of that Heartstone, I can finally go back to my research on these caves.
And oh boy, I think we know by now that the endings of these episodes can really make or break the entire thing, considering what happened with Not So Secret Service, Mojo the Great, Largo, The Long Skate Home, Total Eclipse of the Cart, Quarantine, and In the Doghouse. And wow, does this ending break pretty badly. It's as if everything just slammed face first into a brick wall. Oof, let's talk about this.
Oh no! We forgot about Townsville! How are we gonna save it without the Heartstone?
You mean this Heartstone?
Hold up, are we for real right now? Yeah, it's great that Buttercup has the Heartstone, but were they seriously about to just leave without it? I thought we established at the beginning of this episode that they needed this stone in order to defeat Lester. They were seriously about to just leave and give up, weren't they? I'm serious, Blossom's statement literally implies that they were going to bail on this mission. But they can't quit because the beginning of this segment told us that they need the Heartstone, they don't have any other options, in order to defeat Lester. So they can't leave here empty-handed. Yes, certainly Buttercup knew she had the real thing, but Blossom and Bubbles sure didn't, and they were okay with leaving it behind. What?
Nah. No. Cool.
I mean, at the very least, this little switcheroo is clever in the moment, but what the hell, Buttercup? If she knew Supna was the one who was psycho all along, why even treat Buttercup so horribly to begin with? Why not just have a conversation with Blossom to convince her to go along with Supna and pretend to be on her side? Why go through the overly complicated process of not telling Blossom and creating a rift between her when Supna could just as easily have believed all three of the girls were willing to help her get this Heartstone? There'd be no need for this Ice Madness subplot or anything. They could all work together and then just not give her the Heartstone at the end. Furthermore, why couldn't they just punch Supna in the face at the very start? Or at least once it was confirmed she was crazy? There's no logic in stalling this out and going through the process of turning her sister against her because it is not necessary to acquire the Heartstone. This is a terrible call of judgment on Buttercup's behalf and very well tells me she doesn't even deserve to wield the Sacred Stone of Power. How does she even really prove herself? She literally takes the beast down in one swing and that's all it takes. There's nothing more to it. I don't really see how this tested Buttercup's skills and proved she was worthy. She's just automatically gets its power because she's Buttercup. That's super unsatisfying and it doesn't really feel fitting of the description that was given to us about the Heartstones, again, at the beginning of the episode, by the professor. And also, Supna's behavior in this episode just doesn't sit well with me. Honestly, I think this would have been better if it was actually Lester in disguise, hoping to snatch the Heartstone for himself. I honestly believed it was Lester for the first half of the episode too, seeing as Supna was super suspicious in her mannerisms. There could have even been this subplot where the real Supna was frozen by Lester in the cave and that's how we came to know of her affiliation with the Powerpuff Girls. But I guess not. Oh well, kudos for doing something semi-unexpected from my perspective at least. Although I still have to beg the question why Supna's even in the caves in the first place because I don't really see how Antarctic crystals would help cure her spider issue. At least in Spider's sense, when she was trying to study the Aranhita flower, it made sense because of its connections to the spiders in the area, but here, crystals in Antarctica, I don't really get it. Unless she was obsessed with the Heartstone's power before she even came here, but then that begs the question of how did she even become obsessed with the power in the first place if she wasn't already here, you know? I don't know, I just don't really see how Supna's spider correlation translates to a cave in Antarctica. I don't even think there's a single spider species in existence that lives in Antarctica. But that brings part 2 of Small World to an end. We're currently halfway done with the special, so now is a good time to take a quick breather if you want. Feel free to pause the video here and come back to watch the second half when you're ready, or if you want to carry on right away, then keep watching. I'm going to be getting into part 3 of this special here now, but I'll give you a few seconds before continuing. Alright, I'm glad to see you're ready to continue on. So unlike the last episode, which dedicated an entire plotline to Buttercup's Heartstone, this time around we're going to be collecting the other 2 stones in the same part because this special is only 4 segments long instead of 5. I don't know why, I think it makes perfect sense to have an intro episode, one episode dedicated to each of the girls acquiring their respective Heartstones, and then a conclusion, but instead Blossoms just gets shoved to the first 2 minutes of this episode, and Bubbles gets the back 9 just like Buttercup did. What a surprise. Or at least, that's what it came across like. When you really think about Stone Cold Spider, Blossom and Buttercup get the same amount of attention to them, whereas Bubbles takes the back seat. So even though only Buttercup gets her Heartstone in that episode, Blossom does have a pivotal role in the conflict. In retrospect, I'm not really as bothered about Blossom's Heartstone getting shoved to the front as I used to feel, although that's not to say that all of its problems can be ignored. I still would have preferred 5 episodes, but it doesn't feel like Blossom got gypped, per se. Regardless, at least I can say I enjoy this episode more than the first 2. It's probably the best one of the 4, if only because Bubbles is way more likable than usual during her Heartstone challenge. But I guess we should continue pressing onward, shouldn't we?
There it is! The second Heartstone!
To avoid the curse is clear. To take a treasure, leave its equal here. It's a riddle.
So we open with the girls somewhere in the middle of the Indian Ocean, where they stumble upon a sunken shipwreck at the bottom of the sea that houses the pink Heartstone, Blossom's corresponding relic. As such, she is the one who takes charge in finding it, but upon entering the room with the stone, she stumbles upon a riddle that requires the correct answer in order for the wielder to be deemed worthy of its power.
This place might be booby-trapped. Aye, aye, Captain. Bubbles, where did you get that hat? I got it from that nice man over there.
Well, so much for that. Bubbles just caused the Heartstone to turn into a jellyfish monster that chases her and Buttercup around while Blossom continues solving the riddle. Although, Buttercup doesn't prove to be of much worth because she just gets lodged inside a cannon and proceeds to do nothing for the rest of the battle. That doesn't last long though, because Blossom manages to discover the solution to the riddle. Although, when I think about it, did what Blossom say really sound like a riddle?
To avoid the curse is clear, to take a treasure, leave its equal here. It's a riddle.
Sounds more like instructions to me. And how do you even know which definition of equal it means? This could be referring to equal size, equal shape, equal color. This could have been a little more specific.
I know! Leave its equal value. The most valuable thing I own, my first A+. Nice work. Mwah.
I get that this riddle is meant to force Blossom into a situation of self-sacrifice, a la Thanos tossing Gamora off a cliff. You know, that's the second Thanos reference I made in this video. Weird. But she parts with this thing way too easily for me to believe that it has equal value to her as that of the Heartstone. My first A+, my most treasured possession. I could never part with such a sentimental see ya. No. There should be a struggle here, some form of resistance. You can't just have her give up something that holds that much value to her like it's worth nothing at all, unless this is meant to imply that the Heartstone is also worth nothing to her. I mean, equal value is equal value, no matter how small or large the actual quantity, right? If the Heartstone really is that worthless to Blossom, then I guess this checks out, but I'm not giving the special credit for thinking that way because the Heartstone was clearly established to have a ton of value to the characters, given how vital it is for them to be able to defeat Lester Von Luster with them. This is the same reason why I criticized Blossom and Bubbles wanting to leave the ice cave just a few minutes ago. So yeah, I'm dissatisfied with Blossom's obtaining of the Heartstone, but she's only given 2 minutes to acquire it anyways, when really I could have seen a whole episode based around this struggle where she would need to face the idea of letting things go. And see, that's the problem with this whole premise. It feels like these Heartstones should pose challenges to the girls so they are allowed to grow as characters and overcome difficult obstacles that put their strengths to the test. This is the perfect setup for challenging the heroes in ways that can allow them to meet their full potential, and yet Buttercup and Blossom just obtain their respective Heartstones with minimal effort given. Maybe I expect too much from this show, but I certainly should expect more from a multi-part TV special over a regular 11-minute episode, should I not? But I digress. The girls hit up the professor on their cell phones and he tells them that they need to acquire the final Heartstone located in some ancient temple in South America, so the three head off that a ways. Oh, and for some reason the model used on the girl's cell phone for the shrunken professor isn't the same one we saw in part 1, but rather the model from that time me pretended to be the professor when talking to Bliss in The Power of 4. Why this model exchange was made for this one scene here, I have no idea, especially because their phones have always shown the mayor's normal model whenever he's appeared on it. That just feels inconsistent. Meanwhile, at Lester Von Luster's lair, Mojo is seen pushing him on his couch made of pure marble as a way of setting up that Lester doesn't have any respect for Mojo and was just using him to get what he wanted. Typical supervillain betrayal fodder. Yeah, it's only there for like 30 seconds and it's not really important to the plot, nor is this goose gag returning once again.
Letting you pick a leader didn't work last time, so this time I'm appointing Yolanda as the new leader. Bye!
But hey, it's harmless at the very least. The girls arrive at the temple where they meet this hooded figure who warns them of the temple being cursed. Although that's not enough to scare them away, so she reveals her identity as the security guard to what I'm guessing might be some sort of attraction? I can't really figure out if this is some sort of recreational site because she's charging $5 a head for entry, yet the interior is rigged with dangerous booby traps and people are known to have gotten lost in there for years, like the pizza guy for example.
All who enter the temple are trapped in an endless maze that no
No one can escape, not even the pizza delivery guy.
I don't know. It's a little vague what this is actually meant to be. Attraction, the real thing, or whatever it may be in between, Bubbles is scared shitless with all the spiders and darkness and creepy atmosphere to the point that she's cowering behind her sisters. Although they reassure her that they'll stick together in order to find the Heartstone, so she has nothing to worry about.
We'll take every step of this crazy maze together.
You're right, guys. Let's do it. Guys?
Okay, what the heck? Normally, I understand situations like this if, say, the power goes out or something, but what on earth caused this room to go completely black when there are lit torches lighting up the room in the background? Those can't just magically go out. I'm sorry, but this is a continuity error that I just cannot ignore because there is no source for this disappearance and reappearance of light, nor does it make sense within the context of the setting and with the characters. Like, there could have been moving walls or trap doors that separated them, seeing as we're in an ancient temple and all, and those things are featured in the episode later on, but this had to be the worst way to force the girls into getting separated from each other. Like, really? The screen just randomly cut to black and Blossom and Buttercup magically warped to who knows where without making a single sound? That's the best it could do? At the very least, the torches could have been animated to fizzle out and be reignited, but no, the screen literally just hard cuts to black for no reason and then hard cuts back. Well, this is what we're working with now, and Bubbles wanders around the temple until some walls start closing in on her, attempting to crush her into oblivion. Lucky for her, she asks herself what Buttercup would do, and she punches through the wall with ease to escape. This gives her the confidence she needs to go from being a scaredy cat to prancing around as a regular cat. Her words, not mine. It's cute, and definitely seems like something Bubbles would do, but that's quickly ruined when she runs into an unexpected stranger.
I'm the pizza delivery guy. I've been wandering around the labyrinth for 2 years looking for whoever ordered this pizza.
Yep, it's that same pizza guy that supposedly got lost in here 2 years ago, and how he managed to survive this long, I'll never know. Lucky for them, he knows of a door that could allow the two of them to escape together, and they head on over to it only to find another riddle. Odd how Buttercup's Heartstone did not have a riddle tied to it, but the other two did. Wonder where the consistency went with that. If it was just Blossom's stone, then that would make sense because that would appeal to her logical thinking, but why'd Bubbles have to solve one too? Either make them all unique or all three the same. Having 2 out of 3 be similar but not the third one just seems awkwardly imbalanced by whoever planted the Heartstones.
If freedom from this maze seek ye, give this doorman eyes to see.
Well, after giving it some thought, she deduces that her hair beads look like eyes, so she places them inside the skull and opens up the door, and the pizza guy feels bad that her hair's messed up, so he gives her his to make up for it. Aw, that was nice. This guy's not so bad. Although the reality of the writing is that this guy solely exists to give Bubbles her hair beads back because it would have been too much trouble to have her animated as missing those beads for the remainder of the episode. I think this is proven by the fact that he doesn't want to enter the room because he wants to stay where it's safe, only for a trap door to, conveniently, open at this exact moment from underneath of him and swallow him into the ground. This leaves Bubbles trapped inside the room with the Heartstone, which forms into a giant cobra creature, which tries to defend itself, just like the other two monsters. So we got a Cerberus coyote, a jellyfish, and a cobra. Not sure if there's some significance in choosing these 3 animals, but if there is, feel free to enlighten me because I couldn't find a correlation. I think these creatures were just chosen based on the environments that the Heartstones were kept in. Anyways, Bubbles attempts to take it down using brute strength like Buttercup and intelligence like Blossom, but neither of those end up working out for her, so she has to resort to doing things the old Bubbles way.
Just Bubbles. Just me. That's it. My sisters are great, but I am too, Mr. Snake.
Wait, so you're telling me that every time the girls have been tied up or trapped in this manner during episodes of this series, the girls could have just created clones of themselves to escape without even having to try? What kind of bullshit is that? Now there's no legitimate reason for the girls to be tied up and not have them escape. That is a nice way of showing that Bubbles' methods were the key to acquiring the Bubbles-themed Heartstone, but I don't think this was the best way of going about this, and here's what I mean by that. I don't really see how having a bunch of Green Lantern clones hug this Cobra causes it to spontaneously combust, especially when they don't even squeeze the thing that hard. I mean, it would have been cool, hugging the thing to death or something, that'd be super Bubbles-like, but just pressing up against it? Nah, that doesn't cut it for me. I also would have thought an idea like, say, Bubbles approaching the Cobra and talking to it in order to calm it down might be another option for her too. You know, show a little empathy, kill him with kindness, and it'll back down sort of thing. Both of those options would have been much more satisfying actions Bubbles could have taken to defeat this thing rather than pressing up against it. That's so anticlimactic. But she gets the Heartstone all the same, and Blossom and Buttercup come sliding in through a panel that opens in the wall, and the three reunite together once again.
Bubbles! We've been looking for you for hours!
Hours? Bro, you guys have been separated for like 6 minutes. What are you talking about? I mean, maybe if the episode acknowledged a change in continuity via time lapse or montage or cut away to another location, kind of like what I mentioned in the first part, I could believe that there was a larger passage of time in between their arrival and Bubbles acquiring the stone, but from our perspective, there was not a single jump, skip, or slowdown in time from their separation to this exact moment. Everything followed Bubbles seamlessly without a single skip ahead. And that, as I said in the first part, is a super huge pet peeve of mine. There was a simple solution to this. Have Blossom say, "Buttercup, it's been 5 minutes," in an unamused tone like that, and boom, I just made a joke. Problem solved. No issues whatsoever. Well, the series has proven time and time again that it doesn't even have a basic comprehension of time because it contradicts itself nearly every time time is brought into the equation. So at this point, I should be asking the show to tell me something I don't know. Speaking of time not making sense, the girls head out and the pizza guy falls through the ceiling, which, by the way, also is confusing because he managed to fall down below ground level yet somehow made his way above ground level so he could fall back to ground level again. But he falls through the ceiling and the security guard goes,
"It's cold. I'm not paying for this." Aww.
Never mind the fact that this man has been trapped in here for 2 years. So the fact that the pizza wasn't a disgusting, rotting mess by this point, hell, the fact that there was anything remaining in that box at all is impressive. But again, I chalk this up to the show not even having a first grader's understanding of how time works. As much as I think the pizza guy is a genuinely swell dude, he has no purpose being in this episode. If instead of him just giving Bubbles his hair beads, Bubbles just found some other items around the tomb that she was set out to explore in order to open the door, I'd be fine with that. Heck, that would have been awesome. Have Buttercup and Blossom get trapped behind this wall or get stuck in something, and have Bubbles find a way to go and get them out of that trap. If she had to open this door to get to the Heartstone, which would allow her the ability to help them escape, then have them lying around in the tomb. Maybe she has to solve some booby traps in order to get it. That's a different take on having to prove herself worthy without just solving a riddle the same way Blossom did in the first 2 minutes. A riddle is certainly fitting for Blossom. A battle is certainly fitting for Buttercup. Bubbles having fun and frolicking is certainly fitting for Bubbles, and if she just frolicked around the tomb, easily avoiding these traps despite the fact that any normal person would easily get killed by them, that would be great. I would love a little sequence of Bubbles just skipping around, avoiding arrows and poison darts and a boulder chasing after, just random things like that. Indiana Jones stuff, you know what I'm talking about. That would be great. I'd be all over that. But instead it's just she meets with a pizza guy and they open one door. Again, that and the battle with the Cobra were both super underwhelming, and despite this being my favorite of the 4 episodes, I don't take that back, there was certainly a lot of room for this to be way better. But that concludes the Maze Daze, episode number 3 of this 44-minute special. Personally, as I said, I consider this a really good episode, even with its issues revolving around the continuity and the missed potential. Bubbles is at her cutest here, and it is good to see that she's getting some positive reinforcement towards her own tactics and strategies when it comes to being a superhero, rather than her relying on her sister's methods all the time. Sure, we've had episodes like Splitsville, Blossom Cubed, Salamander, which have taught our characters that their sister's methods can be efficient depending on the right circumstances, but it's good to finally see an episode where a girl's own way of thinking is shown in a positive light that didn't rely on coincidence for the sake of comedy. Again, that's not a diss towards Salamander, but it didn't take Bubbles' successes seriously the way this episode did. Also, the fact that this episode doesn't undermine her sister's abilities is also a positive. Buttercup's brute force to get through that wall and Blossom's logical thinking to solve that riddle were still applicable in those situations and showed that yes, that's still a valid method to solve a problem, but as the battle with the Cobra at least entailed, they didn't work in that combat situation because the Cobra was easily able to counter those things. It proves that certain methods work in certain situations, but just because something is successful one time doesn't mean it will always be successful. That's really good, and I'm very glad that this episode did not undermine that point. I think the setting made sense for this to be a site for the Heartstone. Really, my wish is that Blossom got her own episode instead of getting crammed in at the front because there was some serious potential for a good Blossom story there. But again, she did have a lot to do in Stone Cold Spider, so it kind of evens out. That whole self-sacrifice thing, I don't believe Blossom ever had an experience like that in this show, so that's a prime opportunity for her character to grow, wasted. Well, I guess that just leaves one more episode to go. Heart to Heartstone, the stunning conclusion to this 4-part special event, begins now.
Professor! Professor! Professor!
And so, the final part begins as we rendezvous back with the girls and the professor at the deserted site of where Townsville used to be. And the professor explains that he has determined the location of Lester's secret Las Vegas castle in the sky, so the four of them head out to put an end to this. Cue the goose gag.
You've really been missing this whole leave yourselves thing. So I'm leaving this origami goose in my stead. Follow him and fly on!
Man, even the 4-part special of Small World couldn't avoid the reboot's staple running gag, although thankfully this one's inoffensive more than anything else. So now that we've addressed this, the Utoniums arrive at the front gate of Lester's lair with no sign of security precautions in sight, allowing them to wander on through his giant hall of snow globes. He's got all sorts of landmarks trapped in here. Sure hope he didn't have Mojo build those shelves though, otherwise he's in for a rude awakening. And if you pay close attention to everything in the background, you'll see more than just duplicates of that random pig from earlier. Now he's got 2 St. Louis arches. Not really sure how that works. This is all we get to see of Lester's base of operations, however, because the girls quickly stumble upon his room where they can see him sleeping on his chair. And I'd say that's a pretty big missed opportunity because the potential with this character is huge. The show really could have gone all out on the Vegas aesthetic with his base. Oh, and that's another thing. So a second reason why I think the Las Vegas aesthetic is fitting is because Lester is collecting snow globes for all of these landmarks, right? Well, in case you weren't already aware, there's actually a section in Las Vegas known as the Las Vegas Strip that's got a whole theme revolving around famous landmarks worldwide. The Sphinx, the Colosseum, even the Brooklyn Bridge appears there. So the fact that Lester is collecting all of these things in the show's universe aligns with his affiliation with the geographic location of Las Vegas perfectly, I find. That's another reason why I like him as a villain. There's more nuance to him than most, which I'll give him credit for. So the professor advises them on their next course of action, that being something that usually would catch the girls off guard.
You have to get the wand, insert the stones, and restore Townsville. All without waking Lester.
Got it!
Wait a second, you're telling the girls that the best thing to do is put the Heartstones inside the main weapon of the bad guy? Shouldn't that be setting off some red flags? Shouldn't the girls think that's just the tiniest bit suspicious? Guess they're just blind followers who can't think for themselves because they approach the wand and just let the Heartstones float right into it without any form of resistance whatsoever, revealing that the professor was really Lester in disguise the whole time.
You fell for Mojo's terrific disguise, Sleeping Guy.
There were so many lines that Mojo could have said that would have been better than that. Yep, Tiny Professor was Lester and none of the girls saw it coming. This probably explains why he wasn't acting like a selfish jackass and had legitimate expository purposes in the story, whereas the real Professor Utonium had literally nothing worthwhile to offer, so he got shrunk with the rest of Townsville and is trapped inside the snow globe. Clever trick on Lester's part, I'll give him that much, especially because I thought he would actually turn out to be Supna in episode 2. In reality, he was the professor. Now that he has acquired all 3 Heartstones, he can activate his true form, and he uses his new power to turn the girls into action figures, defeating them once and for all. As if the toy influence behind this series wasn't enough, right? Look, even if this wasn't done with the intent of subliminal messaging, it still wasn't a good idea knowing how bad the backlash was to the concept of the reboot at the very start. I don't think these specific action figures were legitimate merchandise that was sold in stores, but still, it's not in good taste, and this is the second time this has happened within the past 5 episodes. Also, when I say episodes, I'm referring to Small World as one, even though it technically counts as 4 11-minute segments. I know, it's a little confusing, but for future reference, if I ever refer to Small World again, I'll be describing the entire thing as one entity, even though I'm counting it as 4 episodes, unless I specifically name the title to one of the segments. Total Eclipse of the Cart was the other episode where an obligatory toys reference was made, in case you were curious. Although, while we're on the subject of these toys, this is probably a coincidence, but the show's track record seems to prove otherwise. I love how Buttercup's box is the one that advertises that she can talk. Kind of fitting that the clear favorite is the one that gets the privilege of using their voice, don't you think? I also find it strange that Bubbles and Buttercup get their respective snuggle buddies, but Blossom just gets a stack of books instead. What, was President Dinosaur not good enough or something? But with the Powerpuff Girls defeated, Lester sees this as his opportunity to open up to Mojo about the truth of their relationship. Which, to be fair, we all saw coming.
You're a pathetic excuse for a supervillain, and I've just been using you so that I could destroy the Powerpuff Girls and get the Heartstones for myself.
Well, that wasn't gentle at all.
Mojo is super incompetent in this show, and the marble couch scene from the Maze Daze was pretty much the dead giveaway that this betrayal was going to happen sooner or later. Now that Lester has it all, what more could he need from Mojo? So he kicks him out of the building along with the marble couch, leading Mojo to realize that there's nothing more he can do now.
It appears that Mojo is left but with one choice. Become a cobbler.
Yeah, that was a little random, but thankfully this isn't what Mojo ends up doing for very long. No, instead he climbs back up into Lester's tower and apologizes for not being a better assistant. He even begs for one more chance to impress him, and Lester gives him that chance. Thus, Mojo begins his magician act as Mojo the Jojo, and he pulls various Lester-themed merchandise out of his top hat as an obvious way to appeal to his master's narcissism. This is a tactic used to soften Lester up a bit so that Mojo can lure him into his trap by asking him to participate in his next trick.
Let me see.
Oh, Lester, we could have made magic together.
Mojo, that's disgusting. Like, I get you look up to the guy and all, but Jesus Christ, keep that to yourself. Disturbingly suggestive comments aside, I really like how Mojo actually defeats Lester in the exact same way that he was beaten by Bubbles in part 1. It just goes to show that Mojo did learn from his past mistakes and actually used the same trick that once worked on him. It's a cool callback and a way of signifying character growth and adaptability. This window of opportunity allows Mojo to free the girls from their karate chop action imprisonment, but Lester turns him into a goose before he can do any more damage, leaving the rest of the fight up to the Powerpuff Girls. They don't really do anything though, because Lester pretty much uses the Heartstones to strike at them right away before they even get a grasp of what's going on, and as with the previous episodes, the climax always happens to be the source of many questions, and wouldn't you know it, Heart to Heartstone is no different in that regard. And it looks like the tables have turned now that the Powerpuff Girls magically have control over the Heartstones even though they didn't before because the plot demanded it. How wonderful! Hey, why didn't the Heartstones respond then? Are they just activated by a voice command and the girls didn't say anything? I mean, if the stones had a will of their own, you'd think they'd be aware of when they were being used by somebody who didn't prove themselves worthy. I mean, Bubbles even says,
Why don't I have control over the Heartstones?
We do! Yeah, because we earned the Heartstones.
This just isn't adding up. Seriously, why did the Heartstones only listen and protect the Powerpuff Girls now? Why did they allow Lester to use their power to begin with if he wasn't proven worthy? This whole reversal seems to prove that these things have some sort of will of their own, and considering that was implied in Lester's, not the professor's, exposition dump in part 2, and all 3 of the stones took on a monstrous form to defend themselves, yeah, I just don't understand why the girls ever lost control to begin with. The Heartstone seem to have willingly floated right into Lester's wand, although maybe one could argue they were pulled by some sort of mini tractor beam or something, but then why wasn't there any resistance? I suppose you could make the argument that the girls were willing the Heartstones into the wand because that's what they thought they should do, but once they realized what was wrong, why didn't they just will them back out, you know? I also love how the girls' strategy in this situation is to just sit there and let Lester punch them in the face. Like, that's how they're gonna defeat this guy. That's how they're gonna combat him, by allowing him to punch them square in the face. Yep, that's sure to work. This feels really coincidental in how the girls gain control of the Heartstones. They just cowardly say stop because they don't know what to do, and it just magically makes them stop, and the girls magically gain the upper hand. Hey, remember when they were super cocky in Abra Disaster? Where did all of that go? It seems like Small World is taking Mojo's magic explanation to heart because that seems to be the answer for everything here. In parts 2, 3, and 4, the girls are nowhere near as egotistical as they were in part 1, which is really telling about how terribly the first part set everything up. Also, one more thing. Other than contrivance, why didn't Lester just trap the girls and turn them into action figures again? I mean, that's all he had to do here.
We beat the Cerberus!
We solved the riddle of the jellyfish! I overcame my fear of being alone and ouch!
The girls regain control, as I mentioned, and even get those little tiaras to wear too. Although why the Heartstones are suddenly the size of a tennis ball is beyond me. Remember when these things were almost the same size as the Powerpuff Girls' heads? Well, somehow Lester must have cast a shrink spell on those too, because throughout the special since their initial appearance, they seem to keep getting smaller and smaller and smaller. At the very least, I do enjoy the fact that they use their respective Animal Guardians transformations to beat Lester up and down, but that's only one aspect. Basically, next we get a montage in which Lester is defeated in a cruel twist of fate by getting shrunken down to size and experiencing a taste of his own medicine. But that's not enough, because it turns out that the girls have a rather merciless punishment set for him.
So, you're cool with keeping an eye on Lester Van Loser?
Oh yes, he'll go great on the shelf in my bathroom.
Oh god, that's so cruel. Oh, and Mojo is now leading that same flock of geese we've been seeing over the course of the entire special, so that brings the running gag full circle, and I guess it's a happy ending for everyone. Whatever happens to the Heartstones now, some viewers may be wondering? Well, we never see them again after this, so who knows, but that's a question that will never be answered. And with that, we've reached the end of Small World. All in all, I sincerely do like this special, at least to a much greater extent in comparison to Power of 4. Other than the obvious plot holes and questions that the special doesn't answer, which is to be expected from every Season 3 episode at this point, I think Lester is a really charming villain, and Dwight Schultz does an excellent job portraying the character. The humor was certainly lacking here, but that's nothing new for the reboot, and there wasn't really an eye-popping animated moment either, but that's not necessary to tell the harmless story that it does. Maybe that's the reason why nobody was talking about this when it came out. It wasn't abysmal. I think the title of Small World isn't very creative nor accurate for the events that actually take place, considering that while, yes, Townsville is a small world now that it's been shrunken down, none of this special takes place in that setting, nor is there a reference to the well-known to be annoying Disney song. Although that's more of a blessing if I'm being honest. I just think that this is a very bare-bones name, and Heart to Heartstone would have been a solid substitute as the name of the special overall, at least from my perspective. But that about does it for the final special episode of the PPG reboot, and the 100th episode at that. 100 episodes. Man, it's crazy to think that not only has the reboot managed to produce that many, but I've managed to cover them all as well. But we're not done yet, so no time for reminiscing. There's still 20 more episodes to go. The series may be approaching its end, but we're only at the halfway point for Season 3. With that said, my final verdict is that Small World is pretty alright, and it does get a recommendation from me, as long as I preface that with the fact that this isn't going to blow your mind. It's only better by comparison, which means it qualifies as passable amongst most other cartoons.